My guest went from alcoholism to a sobriety coach. She's here to tell her story of dealing with loss and how to survive grief sober. Her name is Pam McRae. Pam, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to talk to you. And one thing that I liked about your story is that oftentimes when people think of grief, they think of loss. Like they associate grief with loss. But grief comes in a lot of other forms, including mental health and addiction. And so I wanted to talk to you because in your case, you were a small business owner. I understand that you've got a successful daycare.
That's correct.
And as well as a mom, you're a sister, you're a daughter. But in your own words, you felt like you were sinking. Tell
Yes.
me about that.
Well, I mean, alcohol is an addictive substance. And the crux of it is the more jobs you give it, sort of quote unquote, the better chance you have of becoming addicted to it. So if it is used to relieve your stress, after a hard day, you come home and you have a drink. You use it when you're happy. You use it when you're sad. Anytime there's an excuse, the more jobs you give it, the more chances are you're going to become dependent on it. And I was sliding into that hole and did not like it at all.
And for you, when did the addiction to alcohol begin? Was there anything that triggered it? Or is it something that happened over time where you went from social drinker to drinking excessively?
I mean, we all start out as a social drinker. We can all remember our first taste of alcohol and our body just goes, whoa, no, what is that? Late teens when you're gathering with friends and you have that concoction of whatever it is that you've gathered from your parents' basement. And it just sort of progressed. But I found in the last 10 years, I was drinking to excess and I did not like it. So
Right.
It was just a very slow progression. It went from being socially acceptable to something that I just knew was not right.
Right, right. Well, another reason I wanted to talk to you is that I think that sometimes people look at alcoholism as a male-oriented problem. And you think about the stereotypes. The stereotype is an overweight, middle-aged guy with his belly up to the bar, like Barney Gumble from The Simpsons. And I think that is oftentimes a stigma associated with alcoholism. In your situation, you were a responsible, entrepreneurial woman who happened to have a problem with alcohol. Did that male stigma make it harder for you to seek help, do you think?
The only way it made it harder for me was something like AA, which I think is amazing. I think any program that helps anyone get sober is incredible. But AA was not for me. I knew I had to do something. I knew I couldn't do it on my own. And the stigma attached with AA, like you just perfectly described, didn't suit me.
Right.
I couldn't sit in a room with 60-year-old men admitting they have a problem and they're powerless. To me, I am a powerful woman. I want to succeed. So I needed to find a different way, and I did.
And was there something that made you decide to seek help? Like, was there a certain moment or a certain incident that made you realize that this is something that you had to do?
No, there was no rock bottom, as a lot of people refer to. My house, I wasn't about to lose my house. Everything was just going great. I just knew that there was more to life. And I knew I could overcome this. I just needed a bit of guidance and help and understanding.
Okay, well, it was on November 6, 2017, that you began what you called your sober journey.
Correct.
Now, people might be watching this now who are battling alcoholism. And so can you talk about your sober journey and what exactly you did?
Oh, I would love to. So I was actually browsing around Facebook, surprise, surprise, one morning, really hungover, and I was on a group. I don't even recall what group it was. And this book kept coming up, This Naked Mind by Annie Grace, and it was just, everyone kept recommending it. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll give it a try. Called my local bookstore, love promoting local. They hadn't even heard of it. So I ordered it through Amazon. It came on. And then there's also a free alcohol experiment where basically you just stop drinking for 30 days. And that's the gist of it. And once 30 days is up, you decide for yourself whether you feel better and you want to continue, or whether you want to, go back to drinking, however you want to approach after the 30 days. And I felt so incredible after the 30 days that I knew I was not going to drink ever.
Really? And how hard was that 30 days for you?
The first week was really tricky, and it's more mental. The first couple of days, it takes about 72 hours for alcohol to get out of your system. Once it's out, then it's just the mental, it's the subconscious part of your mind and the neural pathways that are used to reaching for a drink. I've come home from a hard day's work. I'm cooking dinner. I need my beer. It's sunny outside on a Sunday. I'm washing my car. Where's my beer? Anything, you go out with friends to a bar, you go to a wedding, you go to a funeral, anything that you attend has alcohol in it. So getting through that was tricky. But with the proper plans in place and tactics, it became a breeze. And It's now been over 3 years, and I consider myself now just a non-drinker.
Right, yeah, and I was going to ask you that later, but I'll ask you that now. I said that I read that you don't consider yourself sober, you consider yourself a non-drinker.
Yeah.
What's the difference? How do you differentiate a difference?
Sober to me still has a bit of a stigma, just for me personally.
Yeah.
So I'm just a non-drinker. Alcohol is small and irrelevant in my life. It holds no power over me whatsoever. There is nothing in my life that alcohol will enhance.
Good. That's good. On August 3rd, 2020, you reached a milestone that day. You hit 1,000 days sober.
Yes.
And you wrote on Facebook, you said, 1,000 days later, and I can't imagine ever drinking again. How was that day for you? How was that day hitting 1,000 days sober?
It was amazing. I had actually stopped counting days. But I still have the little tracker on my phone.
Okay.
And when I hit, I knew I was approaching my 3-year mark. So I knew 1,000 days was going to come up. So I started to pay attention to it. And to see those 4 digits, like when I first saw 2 days, I was excited. When I saw 14, when I hit double digits, I was excited. Hit 100 days, it was like, wow, yeah. I cannot believe I've done this. When I hit 1,000 days, it was almost like a relief, like I'm here. There is no going back. It is true that alcohol is small and irrelevant. And I have the power now to help others that are questioning their drinking or, however it goes. But I loved seeing those 4 digits. It was very powerful.
Awesome. That's awesome. Well, you were so inspired by becoming alcohol-free that you decided to make it a life's passion to help others overcome their own alcohol addiction. I understand that you became a certified coach for This Naked Mind because not only did they write a book, but there's also a website, and there's courses and there's podcasts and everything available there. So you became a certified coach there, as well as another entity called Forward Freedom. What led you down that path? What made you decide that you wanted to go this route and become a coach and help others?
When I saw the difference in myself and what I was able to overcome and overcome the stigma, as you mentioned earlier, the stigma is just huge around having any kind of an alcohol use disorder. I wanted to show people that you don't have to hit rock bottom. And it's a disorder because you're consuming an addictive substance. We don't question anything else. Everything else, as far as drugs are concerned, is not socially acceptable. There are not cocaine bars, for example. You can't go to a bar and, cozy up and say, I'd like a line of cocaine, please. But you can go up and order 3 double scotches and nobody blinks an eye at you. So I want to try and break the stigma and say, you know what, it's okay if you're concerned with what you're doing. Sit down with me. Let's work through this and I can show you the freedom.
It's interesting. And I find that there's also a comedy aspect too, because oftentimes somebody's favorite story about somebody else will be about that person doing something stupid when they were drunk.
Yeah.
Right? So there definitely is the social aspect about it. So we're doing this in November of 2020. As you mentioned, you're 3 years sober now. And, you know, as they say, life throws curveballs at you sometimes. And so in your situation, you sent me an email and you told me that you lost someone close to you this past summer. And then a couple of months later, you lost your dad. Do you mind talking about them and telling me what happened?
No, not at all. It was my girlfriend who passed away suddenly in June. One of my dearest friends, sadly, she was having some internal medical issues that she was getting taken care of by a doctor, you know, doing all the right things. But an acquaintance of hers said, "Oh, you know what? You've got pain. I've got some pills for you. Let me give you some pills. That will ease your pain." Unbeknownst to anyone, they were laced with fentanyl and it killed her.
You're kidding me.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable.
I still get chills and tears when I think about it.
Yeah, that is unbelievable.
She left behind a 13-year-old son and a partner of many years. They've since been charged with manslaughter.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. And were they intentionally trying to help her, or were they intentionally trying to sabotage her?
Well, you know, and that's such a big question, because why do you put fentanyl in a drug?
Did they know
because
it was there?
It's deadly.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow.
You know, whether they knew it was there, whether the supplier, you know, who knows?
Yeah.
So that was a huge shock. And it was really funny when you're dealing with alcohol and you get hit with news like that. It hit me at 10:30 in the morning. I mean, that's when I found out. Mm-hmm. We call it our subconscious brain. All of a sudden kicked in and said, "Pam, you need a beer."
Right.
And I kind of went, where did that thought come from? Like, it's 10:30 in the morning. I have my daycare is going. I'm not going to have a beer. So I was able to get rid of that thought. But it got me thinking, you know, that this will come up with myself and with others.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was able to visualize how my day would turn out if I did start to drink that day. I mean, it had been, you know, 2.5 years since I had a drink. So I could see myself in a fetal position in the corner, drunk, crying my eyes out.
Right. Right.
Because it's a depressant. And I was in shock and sad and overwhelmed. So as I said, I was able to get that thought out of my head and carry on with the rest of my day and do things that had to get done. But in realizing that, I thought, well, you know what? There are other people that are not going to have the tools or the ability to be able to get that thought out of their head and continue on.
Well, you posted something on Facebook that I thought was a good thing. This was after your friend passed. You wrote, "My heart is truly broken, but in honor of you, I will stand strong."
Yeah.
And I like that. You know what I mean? I mean, sometimes people have trouble dealing with grief, and they don't know how they're going to overcome it. And I always say, you know, you got to carry on, because everybody has somebody that relies on you, whether it be a sibling, a child, a friend, even a pet, somebody. And so you have to try to carry on. So I like that you wrote that. Now, in case of your dad, because I understand your dad passed shortly after your friend, I looked up your dad. You want to talk about a life?
Yeah.
Your dad, 94 years old, a World War II veteran. He was a musician. And so it sounds like he lived a pretty full life. Because you told me when you wrote me that email about the grief that you were dealing with. Hopefully you found solace in the fact that 94 is solid. I only hope I'm so lucky. You know?
Oh, definitely. You know, at 94, with the life that he lived, I love the fact that I was able to spend that many years with him. And also the fact it wasn't up until the last couple of days that his health took a total downward spiral.
Really? He was good
up until the end, he was good.
Really?
He was able to pass it home. He was happy. He was content. Myself, my son Bradley, my brother, and my mom were there. So, I mean, it was just, you couldn't ask for anything more rewarding in the sense of contentment and love in the air,
right,
you know, around that. But yet, on the flip side, he was the first man that I ever loved.
Right.
You know,
right.
As a daughter, I idolized him from forever. You know, my best memories from when I was little are around him. And as I grew up, he was extremely proud that I stopped drinking, extremely proud of that.
That's
And
great.
when I knew that he was, you know, time was getting on and he was getting close to passing, I really had to do some digging to see if I would drink, you know, because that's a real heartache. As you know,
Yep.
you know, losing a father is very difficult. And I thought, no, that would not only dishonor him, which he would come back and haunt me for that one, because you don't dishonor George McRae. But it wouldn't make anything better, and it wouldn't bring him back.
Right.
So why bother?
Well, in the email that you sent me, you said you had never dealt with such grief in a short period of time. Of course, you had COVID-19 on top of it all.
Yes.
You said you wanted to share your experience with others to show them how to survive grief sober. And to me, that was a key term. You said you want to show others how to survive grief sober.
Yeah.
I think you've already kind of explained it, but how did you do it? Like you said, you know, your dad was going to haunt you if you did. But with everything, because I'm sure your daycare probably took a hit with COVID too. So how did you manage to overcome all of that grief over a short period of time and not turn to the bottle?
Because I'm a non-drinker. You know,
Awesome.
and that's what it boils down to. I was able to use the tools that I now share with others and reuse them on myself. Even though I was a non-drinker, I still had a couple of those thoughts, you know, because you get hit with such grief and such devastation so quickly. Again, as you know, it's difficult to cope. But I used the tools that I had, and I really stood my ground and stood strong. And then in looking at it, I realized that grief is very similar to grief covers many things in life, and you know, basically loss. But when you give up alcohol, especially if you are a heavy drinker or have an alcohol use disorder, you're giving up your best friend. So you grieve that process, and you go through many of the stages that you do as if you're grieving a loved one.
Right.
So what I'm doing is designing a program to help people that are going through any type of grief, including grieving the loss of alcohol, to keep you strong and not have you sort of fall back and drink.
That's great. And I'm a big believer in finding an outlet to help you cope. And I feel like in your case, by becoming a coach the way you did, not only are you helping others, but you probably helped yourself too in the process.
Oh, definitely. You know, it's, you know, as a coach, I mean, I run group coaching 6 nights a week, and I've got many, many one-on-one clients, and I knew I couldn't fall back.
For sure.
You know, and I mean, we're human. We all make mistakes, but I didn't want to. So they also kept me going and kept me strong. But it all boils down to I'm a non-drinker. So it's just not an option.
That's awesome. Well, for more information on Forward Freedom, you can go to forwardfreedom.one. I have it on the screen there on Pam's graphic. And you can also check out This Naked Mind online at thisnakedmind.com. And again, we've been talking to Pam McRae, certified life coach and non-drinker. Thanks for your time, Pam. Good talking to you.
Thank you so much. It's just been such an honor to be here, Jimmy.